The Assassination of Jesse James by the Kyle Robert Ford is a long movie with a very long title. And based on the title, one might expect a movie with a complex assassination plot, like the Lincoln assassination, or one with suspect circumstances, like the Kennedy assassination, or at least an assassination plot that provides an interesting enough story to fill up a full movie. But that's not at all what this movie is. Rather than being an assassination plot, it's mostly a character study of somebody in an obsessive relationship. And it's also, eventually, an examination of fame, and how public opinion can cloud our view of history. And this movie does have a lot to do with history. The style of the brilliant opening sequence makes that apparent.
He was growing into middle age, and was living then in a bungalow on Woodland Avenue.
The score, the narration, the cinematography, they all feel like a documentary, something you'd see in the History Channel.
He had seen another summer under in Kansas City, Missouri. And on September 5th, in the year 1881, he was 34 years old.
After this line, I expected a directed by Ken Burns title card to appear and a talking head of Stephen Ambrose. Look at this cinematography, showing the muddled view of our look into the past. Jesse James, obscured by the smoke of mythos and reputation, clouding both the historical perspective of the man and also Bob's opinion of him. And this point of view shot revealing that the blurred frame is actually due to a window is just genius. At the start of the film, Jesse's a hero to Bob, because all he knows is the legends that he reads.
Many's the night I stayed up with my eyes open and my mouth open, just reading about your escapades in the Wide Awake Library.
They're all lies, you know.
Of course they are.
Compared to later in the film.
He's just a human being.
He admires him from a distance, and try as he might, he doesn't fit in with his gang. But we as the audience are sympathetic to Bob at first, because he has some admirable and relatable qualities about him. Ambition and hope.
I honestly believe I'm destined for great things, Mr. James. I got qualities that don't come shining through right at the outset. If you give me a chance, I get the job done, I guarantee you that.
But Frank sees right through him.
You're not so special, Mr. Ford. Hoping to be a gunslinger like them nickel books are about.
And we get a foreshadowing of the blood on Bob's hands. But he remains a sympathetic character. He has a shrine to Jesse in the form of a shoebox, and we feel bad for him because he gets bullied for it. Because he's pathetic.
Okay.
But his character arc takes a turn when he shoots wood. He's perhaps a little too proud of it, with his smirk and his gun twirling.
Blessed are the
Meek.
Blessed are the meek.
And it's during this dinner table scene that we see that his innocent fandom may actually be something more creepy or sinister.
Your daddy was a pastor at the New Hope Baptist Church, and my daddy was a pastor at the church in Excelsior Springs. You're the youngest of 3 James boys, and I'm the youngest of 5 Ford boys. Between Charlie and me is another brother, Wilbur here, with 6 letters in his name. And between Frank and you is another brother, Robert, also with 6 letters.
And we see that Bob is no longer as infatuated with Jesse as he was.
Must have had a list as long as your nightshirt when I was 12, but I seem to have lost some curiosities over the years.
It's after this turning point that he turns in Dick Little and smugly tries to approach the governor, and he has the gall to mock the people who he's turning to for protection. As it's revealed that he's going to try to turn in Jesse, you have to wonder what his motivation is. He seems angry that Jesse beat up the Ford's cousin.
Why'd you come by? So you could tell us how sorry you are you had to slap our cousin Albert around?
But there's clearly something else going on here.
I've been a nobody all my life. I was the baby. I was the one they made promises to that they never kept. And ever since I can remember it, Jesse James has been as big as a tree.
It's out of jealousy. And the irony is that part of the reason that Jesse is as big as a tree is because of people like Bob, putting him on that pedestal. But I believe it goes beyond scorn, and even jealousy. This level of obsession clearly borders on the unhealthy.
He smelled the talcum and lilacs on Jesse's pillowcase. His fingers skittered over his ribs to construe the scars where Jesse was twice shot. He manufactured a middle finger that was missing the top 2 knuckles. He imagined himself at 34. He imagined himself in a coffin.
He is so obsessed with Jesse that he wants to become him, to live his life, to assume his identity.
Do you want to be like me? Or you want to be me?
So it might be that he kills him with that vague hope. Notice that Bob wears a lot of natural earth tone colors throughout the entire film, while Jesse wears exclusively black and white. Once he kills Jesse, Bob wears nothing but black and white for the rest of the film, and he's traded his top hat for one more similar to the one that Jesse wore. And so it's extremely ironic that Bob's brother Charlie becomes Jesse in the reenactments.
Something began to change in Charlie's stage portrayal of Jesse. His gait seemed more practiced. His voice was spookily similar to the man's. His newly suggested dialogue was analogous to a script Jesse might have originated.
Almost as if he's a ghost come back to haunt Bob, taunting him that Bob isn't Jesse.
Listen, Walter, just because you shot Jesse James, don't make you Jesse James.
As for the actual Jesse character, compared to Bob, he doesn't have much of a character arc. He's certainly interesting, though. There's a lot of complexity and subtlety to his character, played brilliantly by Brad Pitt. Watch him stare at the banker lying on the ground bleeding. I first questioned what was going through his head here, until this line later.
I'll tell you one thing that's for certain. You won't mind dying once you peeked over the other side.
Perhaps his murders and encounters with death have convinced him of the fragility and pointlessness of life, to the point that his own life disgusts him.
I go on journeys out of my body and look at my red hands and my mean face. I wonder about that man that's gone so wrong.
Which is why he's obsessed with death. Add this to the fact that he's clearly becoming a bit unstable.
Where's Jim? Where's Jim? Where's Jim? Where's Jim? Where's Jim? Where's Jim? Where?
And paranoid.
From now on, you two won't go anywhere without me. From now on, you'll ask my permission. From now on, you'll ask to be excused.
And you see that he has less of a character arc, so much as a character decline. And that's why this movie is inappropriately titled. I also think that's why this movie wasn't as well received as it should have been. People went into it with the wrong expectations.
I honestly can't recommend it.
It's not a movie about the assassination of Jesse James. It's about his demise, and how one obsessed man affects Jesse's demise and is affected by Jesse's demise. So, why was the movie titled The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford? There seems to be several problems with this title, outside of the fact that it's not what the movie's about.
And that's how I killed Jesse James.
First off, was Jesse James assassinated? His death scene begins with his realization that he's been betrayed by Bob and Charlie. Then he watches as his daughter sings The Water is Wide, which is a song relevantly about the betrayal of a lover. He is fixated on his daughter's shoe, which she lost when he was playing with her, perhaps considering it a metaphor for what his children have lost because of him.
They didn't know how their father made his living, or why they so often moved. They didn't even know their father's name.
He knows what's going to happen. He wants it to happen. This isn't an assassination, it's a passive suicide. Secondly, is Bob Ford a coward? Probably, but I personally think you could make an argument either way. But the title of the movie negates any argument. It makes the decision for you. He's a coward. He's the coward Robert Ford. And so, the title heavily editorializes the film. Jesse James was assassinated, Robert Ford is a coward. And I think the final 20 minutes of the movie reveal why. Jesse James laid claim to 17 murders and countless robberies.
Jesse James was nothing more than a public outlaw who made his reputation by stealing whatever he wanted, killing whoever got in his way.
But as a public menace, he was also a name that everyone in America knew. And so, because he was famous, people mourned his death, even though he wasn't exactly in the good graces of the public when he died. Huh. And while the public temperament was originally captivated by Bob and his story, it turns on him.
Murder! Coward!
Likely because it was only the story of Jesse that interested them in the first place. There were a lot of complex reasons why Bob killed Jesse, more than he lets on.
He was gonna kill me.
So you were scared and that's the only reason?
Yeah. And the reward money.
But the reasons why Edward O'Kelly killed Bob could not be more simple.
Nothing beyond a vague longing for glory and a generalized wish for revenge against Robert Ford.
The public hated Bob, and Edward O'Kelly wanted the public to know his name and to like him. And even though his crime was as deplorable as Bob's, probably worse, the public supports him.
Over 7,000 signatures would eventually be gathered on a petition asking for Kelly's release, and in 1902, Governor James B. Orman would pardon the man.
Robert Ford is a coward, and Jesse James was assassinated, because that's what the public believes at the end of this film. And who do you think writes the history books? The irony of this heartbreaking ending is that Bob Ford was the victim of the same fate as Jesse, if not a worse fate, but no one else saw it that way.
There would be no eulogies for Bob. No photographs of his body would be sold in sundry stores. No people would crowd the streets in the rain to see his funeral cortege. No biographies would be written about him. No children named after him. No one would ever pay 25 cents to stand in the rooms he grew up in.
What this tells us is that it's the fickle monster that is public opinion that determines what stories are passed down to the next generation.
But that dirty little coward who shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave.
Something that can turn on you at the drop of a hat, or glorify you at the drop of a hat, determines the history we remember. Because while history may be written by the victors, the victor is not always the last man standing.
Boy, you got a big old pecker for being such a little squirrel.